Hello and welcome to your Patreon exclusive episode of predictocast, the first of 2020 and the first chosen by you, the Patreons. If you don't know what we're doing over on Patreon right now, there are going to be polls where we will put up movies that you can pick from for us to cover on the bonus episode every month. And this month, we are covering Miami Connection. I'm Josh, and with me as always is Skinner. Hey, Skinner.
Hey, Josh. Hey, all my friends forever. All my friends for eternity.
Through loyalty and honesty. That's right. We are covering Miami Connection, a movie that you and I both know very well. And in fact, a movie that I think even back when we started this show, back in 2017, you were talking about trying to figure out a way to cover it at some point.
At some point, it's a very special movie. It's one of the I think in the top tier of bad movies that everyone loves, thanks to the Alamo Draft House and everything.
Yeah,
I think it literally is top tier. I remember seeing it with some friends very early on in a kind of a group watch setting. Friend of the show from Let's Get Weirding, Bo North, bought it herself, myself, and a couple other friends Dragon Sound t-shirts. So we are all in Dragon Sound together. So
that's awesome.
It has a special place in my heart. Though I was messaging you this as I rewatched it for about the fourth or fifth time. This is the first time I ever looked up the actual Wikipedia plot synopsis.
Yeah.
I had no idea what the plot of this movie was.
Well, it's because it makes no sense. And I think this is the perfect place. I was telling you about this before we started recording. After I watched it, I was kind of just looking around online because it is one of those that sort of sits in the pantheon of like top tier good bad movies. It's up there with The Room. It's up there with Troll 2, with Birdemic, with these things that people just like unabashedly love for their kind of terribleness. And I stumbled across this video essay from 2014. The guy's name is Blake Siefkin. It's called Why Miami Connection is Awesome. And he brought up that about the plot, about how nonsensical it is, about how like it makes no sense generally. He's like, you can look at something like, he mostly compares it to Troll 2 in The Room. He looks at The Room and he's like, a story about a guy whose fiance is unfaithful to him and he's having this hard time with it. Like, a good filmmaker could make that an interesting movie. Troll 2, same thing. A family goes to a town, discovers that it's overrun with monsters. That could be a good movie. But Miami Connection is about a band that gets into a fight with ninjas who are trying to take over the drug market in Florida, and they have to get rid of the band for some reason. It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't. Like, reading up on it kind of piece by piece, because when you watch it, it's just a sequence of things that happen, right? And you'll sit there and you'll go, what? 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 And it visually is hilarious. And it's sincere as fuck, which is one of the most important parts for a movie to be, get to that pantheon of just great, good, bad movies. I would suggest it's actually more enjoyable than most because of that sincerity. This movie is so sincere and is so trying to say something, but is so absolutely not saying that.
Well, okay, so that's other thing that I wanted to bring up about this video essay that I really liked. And if you're interested, again, it's called Why Miami Connection is Awesome. Blake Siefkin, check it out. I want to give him credit because it really made me think about some things that I hadn't thought about. And that sincerity and the general positivity of the movie is something that he points out that a lot of bad movies don't have. Like at the end of The Room, our ostensible hero has killed himself because his life is just over. And in Troll 2, even though they supposedly have vanquished the evil trolls, they go home and then the kid's mom is turned into a troll and eaten, or she's turned into a plant and then eaten by trolls that are still alive. And Miami Connection is like overly positive. It's talking about how good people can be, about how they want to use their taekwondo and their music to spread positive messages around the world. And then even though we get an ending that is completely insane in the amount of violence that it has, which doesn't really compare to the rest of the movie, you get that ending at the end, you get that little note at the end of the movie that like only through the elimination of violence can we truly have world peace. And it's like, it's trying to be positive in this weird way that a lot of bad movies aren't.
What I also love about it is that like everyone has this weird little backstory, but it's not important, but they're so positive with each other. Like when Jim gets his letter about his father, and by the way, everyone in Dragon Sound, the Taekwondo martial arts band that are the stars of this movie and who never lose a fight in this movie. And guess what? They go to UCF, and you'll know that for sure. University of Central Florida. This is called Miami Connection. This is an Orlando movie.
Well, Miami Connection is the drug connection.
Yes, but like the movie, like,
but yes, it's very stupid to call it Miami Connection.
It's I get it because that's the drug trade, but like this movie is so Central Florida, which just makes it funnier. But like they're so happy for him, they just like spontaneously out by the mailbox. And the wonderful thing, the home base of this team of martial artists
of orphans
of orphans,
which that's a thing that's come up on the show way too often for it to be a coincidence. Like you would think, oh, they're obviously picking movies about orphans, but like no, even in Karate Dog, the whole central plot was like, I want there to never be orphans again. And in this movie, which also features martial arts, all the main characters are orphans.
I love when it just brought up, we're all orphans. Like, oh, fucking okay. But
but they're not, because even one of them is like, oh yeah, my parents are from Italy. You're like, okay, wait a minute, I thought you were an orphan.
So they all pick him up like in the middle of the suburbs. Their home base is just a house in the most suburb of suburbs, which is just fantastic. And they just put Jim up on their shoulders and parade him around like he just won the fucking Super Bowl. It's like, you guys are so happy for this guy. But yeah, like they're all... They're each of them who aren't Mark. Mark is their father figure Taekwondo leader. Like each of them is like, here's John, he's Irish American. Here's Jack, he's Israeli American. Here's Jim, he's Korean African American. Here's Tom, he's Italian American. And it's just so they can say like, hey, everyone can get along because we can achieve world peace through the elimination of violence through music and violence.
Yeah, through violence. That's the thing, because like when this movie came out, when it kind of like got rediscovered and put out by Alamo and or Draft House Films rather, like everybody kind of was on it, because obviously the things you remember most about Miami Connection are the music for one, which I think is what elevates it above. It elevates it above like other bad movies, because other bad movies are super cheap, and so is this one. But the fact is, they composed like two songs, like two actual songs, and they play them in the movie.
Play them in their entirety.
Yeah, several times.
It's like the first time I watched it with friends, like I just sat there like, oh, we're getting the whole song.
Yeah.
This song is about friendship.
Yes. And it's a hit too. People love it.
Oh, everyone fucking loves. They're such a hit that they make other bands want to kill them.
Yes, but like, what I was going to say is like, you remember the songs, you remember like the martial arts and the action, but me rewatching it this time, like I'd forgotten all the little details. I'd forgotten like all the orphan stuff. Like I remembered the whole subplot about Jim's dad, but like I'd forgotten that they were all orphans. I had forgotten like all that stuff, those little details that, you know, that Jeff is so angry about his sister dating some guy. Also, too many fucking J names in this movie. We've got John, Jack, Jim, Jane, and Jeff,
and then Tom. But like, like the fact that of the main characters they are named, only two of them don't begin with
Tom
J.
and Mark, and then the bad guy Yoshido.
Yes, and they're all one syllable J names, which it cannot be a coincidence, but it's impossible to follow. Like that's why I had to read up. Like, finally, I'm gonna figure out who is what. I knew Jim. I keep forgetting John. John is the
tall guy who's dating Jane.
He's the Michael Michael Phelps looking motherfucker.
Yes, he's like Michael Phelps and Adam Driver.
Yes,
join forces in the fly machine.
He's the one who's dating the main girl, but he is not the main character.
Well, I guess. I mean, he has Mark the main character.
Mark's the main character. I mean, Mark
kind of.
He's the main person. Like,
yeah, he is. You're right. He's the father figure to the group. He's brought them all together and is like trying to sort of guide them. He's teaching them Taekwondo. He is actually the co-writer, co-director, and then he and the guy who plays Uncle Song, the guy who runs the diner, that guy is the co-director and co-writer, and they wrote it along with Joseph Diamond, who plays Jack. He plays Jack, one of the guys in the band.
This movie is a never-ending parade of, well, that's something else. Like, it is so like, I don't even know where to begin, because we told the plot, and if you haven't seen it, I really suggest, like, go out and watch it. Watch it with friends. Like, it is, you need someone to be next to and turn to and go like, wait, what? Did you like? Are they just filming an actual bike rally right now?
Well, we'll talk about that. I will say that, like, I think that what I was mentioning earlier, like the positivity and like that sort of vibe running through the whole movie, I think just ran through the production too, because like for this being a cheap, low budget movie, they like the stories that I've heard, the things that I've read, and I read about it when it kind of first came to prominence, were that like YK Kim, the guy who plays Mark and who kind of co-wrote and co-directed the movie, he was just super well liked by everybody in this community. He had a Taekwondo school, I think, and he taught lessons. He taught a lot of people. A lot of the people in the movie were members of his classes, and he liked, like, the people in the town liked him. So the cops in the movie are real cops because they liked him. They shut down the street at night for them to have that huge brawl in the middle of the road. Like, that was really on a street that they just closed down for them because they liked YK Kim so much.
I mean, the whole movie is so likable, which is weird, because it'd be so easy to sit back and just go like, look at this stupid fucking movie with the worst ninjas dressed in the dumbest costumes, like doing like their katas and their training at a what looks like a kid's playground.
Park.
In the park. Like, it's all like they're all on motorcycles, which is funny. The plot is basically people keep challenging Dragon Sound, and people keep being beaten by Dragon Sound, but it's so, and like it's mic'd from like across the street, so you can't hear half of what they say. It's shot in the dark. There's this long sequence,
but it still kind of looks good, surprisingly. Like, it doesn't look as bad as it could. It doesn't look like this movie came out it was done in the 80s, 87. Yeah. They filmed it throughout. Like, it wasn't all just 87. I think it took a couple of years to get it all done. But like, it looks better than movies that we have watched on this show that came out in like the 2000s. So besides the rally, which is something else, like, I mean, that's a real situation.
It is, but it looks like an 80s movie. Like, it looks like a professional one. Like, there's a beach scene, and it's not shot like where it's too bright or too dark. Everything's a little too tight.
And they had never made a movie before. That's the thing, it looks good despite the fact that the people involved in making it had never done anything like this before.
And the amount of shirts not worn in this group. Like, I thought it was so funny when they kidnapped Tom, who is something else as well. He's kidnapped with a shirt on. When we next see him, his shirt is gone. I'm like,
he didn't need that shirt.
Like, he's barely ever wearing a shirt. Did you go like, Mark, I know we kidnapped you, but this whole wearing a shirt thing is not working for me. We gotta take it off you.
All right, so let's break it down as much as we can. Let's kind of go through it because maybe there are some listeners who haven't seen it or don't remember everything, and I want to go through like little details that jumped out at me that I really enjoyed. First things first, the production company logo, Manson International, which
Wow.
I just rewatched Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, so I was like, oh, it's Charles Manson's production company that he started in prison.
You sit there, you see that name, and it's like, huh.
But like
Wow.
it opens with a group of guys, a couple groups of guys having this sort of meeting where they're doing a drug deal. They have bags of cocaine that look like they're hidden inside packages of ramen, and suddenly these ninjas come in, kill the guys, have this big battle, lots of gunfire, lots of murder.
Oh, it's pretty. I love that it's like Uzis versus arrows and ninja stars. And like you see a lot of the gangsters, the drug dealers shooting at the ground because that was just an easier thing to make them miss. We could see the sparks.
Yes,
but it's such a funny start that like here are two people, neither are the good guys.
Yes.
It's drug dealers versus the ninjas, who are the antagonists of the movie,
who are there to steal their drugs.
Like this is where like the first two times I watched it, it totally lost me. I'm like, which side of these are the good guys who are trying to stop the bad guys? And like, no, it's the bad guys stealing from the bad guys.
Other bad guys. I like that every one of the gangster guys, every one of like the guys who are involved in the drug dealers just looks like a T-ball coach from the rec center. Like they all look the same. They all have the jackets on and the glasses and like...
And mustaches.
Oh, yes, and mustaches. They all look like they're about to... They just got done coaching a Little League game and they're here to do this drug deal.
It's wonderful. But like, and then the ninjas are just wearing like ninja costumes from for a Halloween. Like there's nothing subtle about it. There's like black cloth covered faces. If you look at the credits, like the ninjas are like Ed Brown, Charles Stevenson, and like they're not doing anything.
Ninja.
They're funny every time you see them. Every time you see them, the costuming is so funny because anytime it's lit by regular daylight, it looks ridiculous.
Well, yeah, I think that's the thing. I think that's like a thing too that's been obviously disproven in that was like a popular culture kind of thing when they were making these movies, but there was, I've read things where they're like, yeah, ninjas wouldn't wear that. They would look like regular people because they were assassins. They needed to get close to people and blend in with their surroundings so that they could kill someone and get away quickly and not be caught.
The idea of the Snake Eyes from G.I. Joe costume is that he would wear that, the ninja would wear that when trying to hide in a dark area.
Yes.
So when they're wearing this like shadow outfit in broad daylight in Orlando.
Yeah, and riding motorcycles.
And the motorcycle. When they're all wearing their hide and shadow outfits in the middle of the day driving motorcycles. One of my favorite
things about this whole sequence is that like the ninjas succeed. Obviously, the guns are no match for swords and bows and arrows. But they take the cocaine and they go back to their home base. And this guy in a white ninja costume, who's their leader, Yashido, he comes in and he's like, you got the drugs, but you left behind the money. Like these are bad ninjas.
Yeah, he's like, "Where's the money?" Which is a ninja catchphrase. I also like that he slowly unmasks. Like we're supposed to be like, "Oh, it's him," but we don't know anybody.
We don't know him yet. Like if we have no idea who that is,
and who he is never like important. Like he's never like, "Oh, it turns out he's actually connected to XXX." No, he's just the leader of the ninjas.
Yeah, he's just the leader of the ninjas. And my favorite part is that at the end of the movie, when they have the big like showdown between him and Mark, that guy's mask never comes off because it's clearly not the same actor. Like they were done with him. And they couldn't get him back to shoot anymore, so they just keep him in that costume the entire time.
I love that so many people fight in this movie with like long blunt objects. Someone attacks one of the ninjas with like 2 planks of wood, and I'm like, you couldn't pick a less effective weapon against a martial arts person.
I think at one point, Jeff, I think towards the end, his like final big battle, he uses like those strips that they put down to keep birds from roosting on the tops of buildings.
It looked like it was like a barbed wire bat, except for it's a long. It was not quite. It was much more.
It was like a piece of rebar
uniform.
with barbed wire on it.
It was two of them. He had two of them, and it's like it. I mean, all he had to do was graze Mark. He would have like given him like tetanus.
Well, so he demands no mistakes, and then we get the opening credits. We get a song. This is not a Dragon Sound song, but this is a song, and it kind of lays out the movie. It lays out the things, and the best part about watching this with subtitles on, or closed captioning rather, is that you get the lyrics of the song, which is "Bikers by day, ninjas by night, steal all your cocaine." The
thing is, they're never bikers by day. Like they never, like the ninjas are never shown out of costume. There's a separate band by Jeff who aren't the ninjas.
Yeah, there's a separate gang. There's also the band that is mad at Dragon Sound for stealing their gigs. We've got like three kind of groups of people that all hate Dragon Sound, and only one of them has a real motive. Although Jeff, I guess he kind of has one because his sister is dating John in the band, and he doesn't like that because he's a toxic masculine asshole. But the opening credits, they have the song. They say, "Escape from Miami, escape with your life. Strike with no mercy into the night." Great song, perfectly sets the tone. But I love story songs like this. I love story songs that set up what these characters are, telling us that they're bikers by day, telling us that they'll steal all your cocaine. I love that.
It's basically like a cocaine motorcycle ninja version of like introduction to DuckTales and one of the Disney afternoon TV shows. Life is like a hurricane. Here in Ninja Cocaine.
Yeah, life is like a hurricane. These ninjas will steal all your cocaine.
It's amazing. And we come back to the movie already for a new dimension of rock and roll.
Yeah, so
Dragon Sound. Like immediately we go right into another song.
Yeah, we go right to where we find out that we're in Orlando now. The ninjas have shown up, led by Yoshido. He meets up with Jeff, who to me looked like Steve from Married with Children when he went crazy and came back from like the jungle.
Absolutely.
That's an extremely specific reference, but if you
that's
know
all
what
I
I'm
was
talking about, he looks exactly like that guy.
It's specifically what I was thinking about too. It's I called him Beardo most of the time because I didn't hear just so many J names. Like it wasn't until later, and I looked up like, okay, he's Jeff.
Yeah,
but yeah, he's his relationship with Jane
is very bizarre.
It's like the first time I watched it, I could not figure out what was going on. Not because like
he acts like he's like an ex-boyfriend or something.
He acts like he's an ex-boyfriend, and like okay, the idea of the protective older brother who's one of the bad guys is a thing in 1980s movies in general.
Of course.
But like the fact that he'll beat the shit out of John. He'll try to murder Dragon Sound.
Yeah.
And then next time Jane sees him, she's like, "Hey Jeff, what's up?"
Well,
like,
Jane is very wishy-washy because later when Jeff is murdered, she's like, "Yeah, I understand why you did it."
She said
she's totally cool with it.
She says in like the strong, this monotone, like, where was it here? I wrote it down because it's so blunt, and considering that she's never that upset, like that mad at Jeff for what he's doing.
And
Jeff
she's never treated as any kind of like damsel in distress either. Like we have that Tom is our damsel in distress. He's the one who's kidnapped and tied up. Like she's never really involved in the action.
And they act like she's not part of Dragon Sound, which she kind of is.
Yeah, no, she definitely is because they talk about it. They talk about how she is part of the band, but they don't treat her like that. Like when they go off and do stuff, she's never with them. So I just don't know if they couldn't get that actress for all of it. They could just get her for a couple performances and that was it. But they didn't consider her like she's wasn't one of the orphans.
She's like the lead singer on one of the songs.
That is true.
But like she comes back, she goes, "I had a lot of thinking to do. I'm hurting inside." And it's like, what? Like, because the first time I watched it, I'm like, it can't. Like, why is she? Is she like is secretly on the bad guy's side because she's she's never that mad at them because she's like, oh, it's just my brother. Yeah, he keeps trying to murder you, but he's my brother. And then he dies. She's like,
well, that whole exchange is so bizarre. Most of the exchanges in this movie are incredibly bizarre because these people were not actors. But when she comes back, she says that line about, oh, I was really hurting inside. I'm sorry I haven't been around much. And John is like, hey, I'm really sorry about what happened to your brother. I felt really bad about it, but we had no choice. And she's like, yeah, I understand, and I love you. It's like, okay, no problem.
On the bright side, because Dragon Sound are good people in a very Disney Orlando sort of way, Jeff kills himself. He falls down from a height, not based on anything. Like, he's just backing up and falls down. Like, Mark does not strike a killing blow against Jeff.
Yeah. They don't actually, they're not responsible for it. It's like he put himself in that situation, and so therefore it's his fault.
Because he doesn't understand that world peace is possible through Taekwondo.
And the elimination of violence.
We'll talk more about Taekwondo and this 1980s concept of what is now kind of like just a thing. But like how they treat Taekwondo as like this, like, oh, we're stronger, more powerful than everybody because we have Taekwondo, and Taekwondo is going to change the world.
Yeah,
and it's like, you know what really changed all these weird things about like different types and schools of martial arts is UFC. Like, it turned out, like, guess what? Just learning how to make someone twist people into pretzels and then punch them. That's all you really need to do.
Yeah, you sort of, it is interesting how that kind of has taken over. Like, that is the thing now. Like, I guess boxing is still popular, but it's not, I don't think it's as popular as like UFC fighting.
Right. Like, and it's been like, it's been kind of proven, like, if a UFC fighter was put into a boxing match and couldn't do all the things they would do, they lose because it is a trained discipline. But if it was just a fight, they would take the boxer down and beat the shit out of them. Yeah. So, but like, it turns out that, like, the world's not going to be changed through like just training and this wonderful Eastern art that everyone will learn and understand. Instead, it'll be taken over by white guys with tattoos who are secretly mega assholes and who are beloved by people who make dash cam videos while wearing sunglasses and telling about how snowflakes can't take how they tell it like it is. That is the where all this was headed in a way that we probably didn't understand. This is where white guy karate went to.
Yeah, and white guy karate has even been replaced. I mean, the 90s were, it's kind of interesting. There was like a trajectory, and then it, like, white guy karate hit really big, I think, in like the late 80s, 90s, and then we got into UFC. So we see the performance of Friends. They're introduced. They're at Park Avenue, Central Florida's hottest nightclub, and they get introduced. They play their song. They're all wearing karate gis. I guess not karate gis, but they're all wearing gis. Jeff spots his sister Jane on stage with the band. She's singing. She's kind of dancing around with John. She kisses John, and he's like immediately jealous. And Yoshido is like, "Oh, you better watch out for her and for this band, because for some reason they know that this band is going to be trouble to their operation."
Literally, if they had decided to never get involved with Dragon Sound, whose only thing like is that one of their members is dating Jeff's sister. If they had never involved themselves, none of their problems would have happened.
Yeah, no, it wouldn't have happened at all, because it's not like the band is going out of their way to stop something. They are only responding to like attacks on them. So when they have the big street fight, it's because someone is after them. It's when they go to the train yard and fight Jeff's guys, it's because Jeff says, "Come to the train yard and fight my guys." When they fight them at the end and kill Jeff, it's because they kidnap Tom. Like, when they have the big battle at the end, it's because they attack them on the way to meet Jim's dad. So it's like they're never the aggressors. They're always just responding to being forced into the attack, and they're better than everybody who attacks them.
And they're also always way outnumbered. Like, this movie understands, like, the idea of the good guys should be outnumbered by the bad guys, because that's what makes them the good guys.
Like 10-1 in that first fight sequence.
It's ridiculous, but like, there's never any reason for anyone. They're just a band. They're just a band at a club. And while the other band should be upset, they shouldn't hire fucking martial artists to take out.
Well,
just go find another club. Like, go to Pleasure Island. It's 1987. Go to Disney Pleasure Island and just get a different gig.
Well, those are the only conflict. That's the only conflict that makes sense to me. Like the other band being mad. Like, that is a conflict that makes sense. And if this were you could make something work where and this is stupid that I am configuring Miami Connection in my brain to make it a movie that makes sense, but I'm going to do it anyway because why not? This is Patreon and that's what people pay for. Maybe. But if you had the other band who was like, all right, these guys took our gig, like we're pissed. So, and the lead singer is some really aggressive asshole, which he is in this movie, but like he is a friend of Jeff, who is involved with these he's kind of dealing with drugs, and he's involved with a gang who's also trying to move drugs into the area, and he's trying to get into the drug game, and he's friends with this guy, or maybe the other band is his brother, like led by his brother or something like that. And then he tries to, the band goes after Dragon Sound, they lose a fight, then he goes to Jeff and he's like, hey, can you help me take care of these assholes? And then it just kind of spirals out of there, and that's kind of what happens in the movie, but like it's so like played down, and it seems like Yoshida and Jeff are already worried about Dragon Sound before anything ever happens.
But there's no reason why they should be. They're just a band there's a band of orphans.
Yes.
Who are just happy to have a gig. They don't even want to fight anybody. And what's even funnier is to further make it so that Dragon Sound itself does not, besides their provocative lyrics of "we'll always win because we're on top," but like because they were always on top because we play to win. But the only reason, like, they don't even incite the inciting incident between them and their rival band isn't only that they took their gig. It's because the band confronts the owner of the club over his hiring of Dragon Sound, and the owner of the club beats the shit out of the band.
Well, because he also knows Taekwondo.
Which is so funny because it's just this lumpy, tall white guy who all of a sudden beats the crap out of an entire band.
Yeah.
And like from that point on, you're like, okay, like, and then they bring about 900 guys to help them beat up Dragon Sound and lose again. They're like this band with this guy with his never-ending head wound and his refusal to change his dressing.
He's credited as old rock band leader.
He just looks like Tom number 2, honestly.
Yeah.
He's a chunkier Tom, but that band just gets their ass kicked over and over and over again. And like, but the fact that like, just to make sure, Dragon Sound isn't out for a fight, it is instead the owner of the club who fights them first.
Yeah.
Like,
and when they go to them like later, they're like, the guys in Dragon Sound, I think it's John who's like, hey, it's not our fault. It was just a gig. We got hired. Like, we didn't come in and take it from you. You got fired because the club owner thought your music sucked.
Which is what he tells them. And like, if this was a movie made today by people who know how to write a script, it would be the other band, the Misfits, would come in and complain about Gem and the Hologram taking their gig. And when the owner would say, hey, they're just better than you. I'm sorry. They're the hottest new act. They're bringing people in. They're bringing young people in. I had to move on for you. And then that band would beat up the club owner.
Yes.
And Dragon Sound would have to go get them in revenge for beating up the club owner.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Or like they beat him up and then they would take Dragon Sound's spot through intimidation, and Dragon Sound would have to fight them to get their spot back.
Yeah.
Instead, the club owner on his own beats the shit out of the entire band.
Yeah. It doesn't, I mean, like,
it's
Dragon
so
Sound
baffling.
Dragon Sound can take care of themselves, but also so can everybody else in this town.
Like the uncle.
Yeah, like the store, the restaurant owner. He handles himself pretty well against like 6 guys.
Like you would think in that scene that like he's being attacked by these 6 guys, and like, my God, Orlando, for fuck's sake, I've been there 1,000 times. What is?
Yeah, we got
I have
fucking
never
ninjas,
seen these.
we got crazed maniac bands, we got drug dealers, we got all kinds of problems because the gang that he beats up in his restaurant have nothing to do with the rest of the stuff that's going on.
Don't I expect like next time I go to Orlando, I'm just eating at a fucking Denny's, having a grand slam, and all of a sudden a bunch of old cars with people with long boards with spikes in it come driving down and beat up a band. But like, you think that Dragonstown is going to, because when we see this fight that's broken up between characters we do not know and have not been introduced to really yet, like, oh, this guy's going to be threatened by these gang bangers, and Dragonstown will show up at the last second and save him. No, he beats them up, and then they show up and like, good work.
Yeah, they're like, hey, great job. And he's like, I'm sorry that you had to see me beat the shit out of all those guys.
Like that should be like, literally that's all we ever see.
But we have to jump back to the beginning. We're jumping around. It's fine. If you haven't seen it, you got to watch it. But I love there's little things that I love. One is that we cut to after the first performance, we cut to the college, UCF. And we see there's a computer class that they're in. And I love that Jane is just making circles on her computer.
Sure.
It's like an introductory sort of computer programming class. So it totally makes sense. She's probably figuring out code to get a computer to draw like this circle with like a pattern inside it. And I love that their professor's at the front of the class, and he's like, "Hey, well, we sent a team to the International Programming Conference, and they came in 4th." And he's like, "Let's give them a round of applause." He's like, "This is a movie. You can make them come in first if you want to."
No, it would be fake. No one would believe it. They came in 4th. It's only UCF.
Like I feel like they just filmed a real class because that's the only way that makes sense to me.
Honest to God, if you were making a movie today, we'll say this 1,000 times during this thing, would you have to ask UCF for permission to be so centrally, like, it's not like they're going to college or university with quotes like, yeah, hey, let's go to the school. I'm going to
Florida University.
They are specifically going to University of Central Florida. It is. And like, if you didn't like think like maybe like, oh, it's just hinted at that, or maybe they got it in one shot by mistake and it's supposed to just be a school. Wait till later when everyone in the band is wearing the world's ugliest UCF shirts, and they're very specifically UCF shirts.
Well, I think amazing. Again, I think it is that because like YK Kim was well liked in the community, so UCF was just like, yeah, whatever, come shoot here, it's fine.
I think
like who cares?
Looking back at it now, like, I'm sure UCF is like, that was cool that we did that, because that probably gave us like a lot more publicity than we would ever get otherwise.
Yeah, I mean it's fun. And then so Jane is in class, and we Michael Phelps shows up, John. And now that you've said that's what he looks like, I cannot get it out of my brain. You're totally right. But he comes to Jane's class. He stands in the doorway. He is so tall, and he's got this long kind of coat on that I think on a normal height person would just be a duster, but on him it like comes to his like upper thigh because he's so tall. And he's standing there in the doorway, and he's like mugging for a long time. They have this like weird silent movie scene where he makes weird faces at her, and she laughs and is like, "Oh, you," with her hands, and it just goes on for a long time.
That is a running thing in this movie, is a scene will go on for a long time.
Yes. My favorite part though is at the end of that, it's around this time, but the teacher is walking around the class, and you just hear him go by Jane and go, "Hey, great circle."
Hey, she should respond back with, "Graphic design is my passion."
But they go for a walk, and this is when we get into something that I love about this movie, which is people just giving you insane info dumps on their entire family history, their entire life story without being prompted, because they're talking, they're walking along, and this is in a actual college campus because there's people everywhere. And they go for a walk, and she's laying out her entire family history. She says, our dad left us when we were young. Then our mother died. I don't like my brother. He's very jealous. And she just lays all of this out in a very quick little moment. And it's like, that's a lot if John didn't already know that.
Well, he had said, like, do you have any family? I don't know about your family. I never met anybody. And like, she's already in your band. Like, when were you going to have this conversation with her? When they come up, and like you later will make out with her very heavily.
But maybe they're fairly new into this whole relationship thing. Like they hit it off. She joined the band. Then they started realizing they had feelings for each other. So he hasn't gotten into, hey, when did your father leave and when did your mom die territory yet.
I love that she brings up that she does not like she doesn't like her brother, and he's too jealous, which is very incesty, but like
it's foreshadowing for later when her brother dies, and she's like, no biggie. But
it's funny because like the next the same scene, like, okay, as you said, this is just a college campus. This is like just a daylight parking lot, not like a movie set parking lot or anything. It's just a normal parking lot
There's no sets in this movie. Like, I think everywhere they filmed were actual real locations where someone involved in the production actually lived or worked or had access to.
That's why, like, there's numerous scenes where it's shot way too close up because they literally they had a wall they couldn't back up any further from. But like, it's just middle of the day, or an Orlando parking lot. If you've been to Florida, you've been to 1,000 of them. They're just well lit. Beautiful green grass, great weather there. And then a bunch of cars with people standing up in them like a gang come flying into this parking lot at school. And like the fact that so much of this happens, like they just gangs show up in like long convoys of cars, is so ridiculous looking in the middle of suburban Orlando. It never looks like a tough town or rough town. It just looks like this movie is storming into this like fucking area.
No, when they have the big like street fight, I just kept looking around going like, oh, that little area looks very nice. I bet it's very pleasant to walk around there and do some window shopping.
I probably have driven past numerous areas in this movie, but never thought they probably filmed a martial arts movie here.
Next time
you wouldn't.
Yeah, next time you go to Disney World, you got to take a day where you can just drive around Orlando and look for the filming locations of Miami Connection.
There was a moment where they're Orlando Ninjas, and by the way, they are called the Orlando Ninjas, because he says that out loud one time. They show them practicing, and they show Shido in a like little Japanese building, and he's having tea or something, and I thought, is this fucking Epcot, Japan? Because where else is this in Orlando?
So this is the gang all rolls up and they stop right in front of Jane and her boyfriend Frankenstein.
It's super aggressive. Like, it is super aggressive. And she who just said, I don't like my brother, meets him in the friendliest possible way you could imagine. She's like, hell, hey, Jeff, how's it going?
Yeah, she's like, oh, Jeff, hey, this is John, my friend. And Jeff's response is, friend! Like, he's never heard that word before. He spits it out in a way that's like, that word does not exist in my vocabulary, and I won't have you say it. And I think it's mainly because he saw them kissing at the show the other night, so he knows that they're more than friends. But just the way that he says it, it's like he's never heard that concept before, and he doesn't believe what she's saying.
This is literally a guy who is willing to die rather than anyone ever fuck his sister.
Basically.
Besides himself, I think.
I mean, yeah, their relationship is pretty weird, because later on when she's telling him to like leave them alone or whatever, he's like, I'm your brother, so listen to me. Like, he's trying to get her to just do whatever he wants her to do. But again, it feels very much like a weird obsessive boyfriend, or like an ex who still feels like he has some sort of control over your life or something like that. Like, it's a weird situation.
It should have been written as an ex, except for you had to have a reason for Jane to never be concerned when he shows up. Like, he shows up in the most aggressive manner possible with an entire like gang, holding weapons out of like their cars, just like ready to go in the middle of a parking lot of a university, and she acts like it's just Tuesday.
Yeah.
Like if it was an ex, she'd be like, "Oh shit, stuff's going down." Because it's her brother, she's just like, "Okay, cool. My brother just happened to show up in the middle of this parking lot unannounced for no reason, having stalked me here because we don't have cell phones. So otherwise, why else would he know I'm here? And he's brought an entire gang with him to beat up one tall, lanky dude."
Yeah, but thankfully there is no violence at this point because Dragon Sound appears and runs up.
He does punch.
Oh, that's true.
John.
He does punch John in the face when John's
like,
"Hey,
oh, you're embarrassing me."
Yeah.
He's ready to kill this guy, and she's like, "Jeff, you're embarrassing me. This is so embarrassing." Like, what?
And the band runs up though, and they try to defuse things. This scene is probably the worst example of the dubbing that they do in the movie, because I mean that's a hallmark of kind of bad movies, is like weird dubbing that doesn't quite match up or seems sort of weird, but they're just talking over each other in ways that don't make any sense. It's just like dialogue layered on each other in a way that doesn't feel like what humans do.
This is why I think I never cared about the plot beyond like just the craziness of individual scenes, is because it was impossible to follow because of how they structure these dialogue scenes. You can't hear them.
Yeah, no, you can't. It's true. So we get some other little short scenes here and there. Jeff meets with Yoshida at his hideout. Yoshida basically tells Jeff that he needs to get rid of the band so he can control the area. This is the first time that is brought up as a as like a thing that has to be done. Yeah.
There's orphans that live in a suburban house.
There are a bunch of college orphans who are in a band. Like, these are the least threatening people. I mean, that's not true because they do lay waste to lots of people in this movie. But
left to their own, they're just going to shove their fists into each other's mouths and grab each other's noses with their toeses.
Yes.
And if you think I'm making that up and you haven't watched this movie, guess what? That happens multiple times.
It does happen a lot. This is when we get the next big song, Against the Ninja, which is a weird song for them to sing because at this point they have not had any interactions or altercations with any ninjas. They are just... So I was wondering, like, was this a regular sentiment at the time? Was everyone against ninjas?
That's what I was wondering, because like if you were just someone who is training in Taekwondo because it is a athletic endeavor and you're trying to train your body and your mind and you're just self-defense and it's what your buddies are doing, you're not doing it because there's an evil group that you have to be ready to defend against.
Yeah, there's an epidemic of ninjas in the area and I have to be prepared.
You would assume that the ninjas aren't real or they're just a movie thing.
Yeah.
And you would be surprised when you see them. You would be like, they're a fact of life. And at some point, as a trained Taekwondo practitioner, I'm going to have to proactively attack and fight and defend against ninjas. And this song is very, very much about how Taekwondo is awesome and the best and way better than ninjas.
Yes. So I was wondering, I mean, Jeff is not in this scene, but if he saw that Jane is singing Against the Ninja, would he feel bad about that because some of his best friends are ninjas?
Apparently, Yoshida is his brother. So
as we find later, they refer to each other as brothers. So I don't really know what that is about.
I don't either, because he doesn't have a lot to do with him, honestly, and like he has his own separate gang that are separate from the ninjas.
Yeah. So they sing the song. Everybody loves it. Everybody's on board with the ninja hating. They're totally good with it, which is, again, like, this band is supposed to be promoting positivity and stuff, but they're against ninjas, which is like, all right, sub in another group and this would be a very bad song.
Could you, like, it's not Rockula bad by any stretch, but
no, the songs in this are amazing.
They're amazing, but they're their subject matter is so unbelievably specific that you think there'd be someone in the crowd be like, what is going on?
Yeah.
Like, do you guys hear this? They're attacking ninjas. Who does that?
They would think that it was like a comedy band or something.
A comedy band, like it's like Ray Stevens or
yeah.
They're gonna do the Streak later or some shit. You know what I'm talking about? Like
against the Streak.
They're a novelty band, but they're not. They're just a new dynamic sound that has married the amazing power of Taekwondo with the incredible world-changing abilities of rock and roll.
Yeah. And this is when we get the huge street fight. They get stopped in the road by the previous band and a bunch of goons. There's like 30 or 40 bad guys.
There's so many of them.
They all run around.
They're shaking sticks at them, which is hilarious.
Yeah, they get out of the car. They eventually start this big battle. They're fighting. Everything is going wild. It's pretty well done martial arts sequence. Like it's surprisingly well filmed.
It looks like Mark.
It is mostly YK Kim doing stuff, but everybody seems to acquit themselves pretty well. And the people that he's fighting against, like, seem to know what they're doing. They look convincing. Like, it's one thing to watch like a bad martial arts movie and like you realize nobody knows what they're doing, but like he clearly knows what he's doing and he clearly knows how to make it look good on camera. And I don't know if they're really fighting. I don't know if he's pulling his punches in a way, but like, it looks good, and I was like, this is pretty impressive. Like, just the scope of it, for it being such a cheap movie made by people who don't know what they're doing, for them to be able to close off an entire street and do this big melee brawl in, like, the middle of an intersection, like, it's cool.
It's one of those things where I think that if this was made today, he would have impressed the right people in a way of like, oh, you did this on this budget and this, and like you did this competently, and like, no, you're not going to star in movies because you can't project your voice and you can't act, but like, hey, can you be a producer and can you produce the scenes in different movies or help us?
Or be like a technical consultant or something.
Consultant of something. He would have got something out of it. Like, he wouldn't be like this, like Jackie Chan, like, I'm doing everything and I'm like the cult personality behind the movie, but he would got something out of this instead of like, when it came out, apparently the reaction was like, oh, this makes no sense. And there's 1,000 of these and this is just another bad one, which is once again, like, I want to be these people who like in 1980s who watched so many movies that when one of these movies that were just next level crazy happened, there's like, oh, another one of these. Like, no, this one's different. How did you not notice this? This one is above and beyond what you're seeing every day. How did you just like, what were you doing when you were watching this? That you were just like, another boring movie. Nothing happened in this one. There's more kicks and fights and songs. Like, no, there's a fucking scene this where they're just at a truck driver rally or biker rally. Like there's something different about this one. And why didn't you see it?
Yeah. Speaking of like what I was mentioning earlier, how he was able to get people to, help him like close off streets and like be involved. He has this quote, and it's on IMDb, so, take it with a grain of salt. But he says, my students dedicated themselves to this movie so much. So because he does run a martial arts school in Orlando, Florida, that a lot of the people in the movie were students of his. And he says, the sheriff department, the University of Florida, they supported me so well. I did not lift up the town. It's terrible.
Aww.
So he liked the people of the town, but not the town itself.
Sometimes it happens. Yeah. I love that this is going to be a recurring thing in this movie from this point on as well. Like, so they fight this gigantic band to kick their asses. And the next scene, they're just wearing no shirts in a house, and like nothing ever happened. They're just like,
yeah,
hey, cool, let's just hang out. And like Mark Phelps there is fucking holding a letter away from Jim for fucking ever.
Oh yeah, he has this letter and he just plays keep away from it, and Jim gets so angry.
It goes on forever. This is where they're like, we're all orphans, and you're like, fucking what?
Yeah, so this is he gets the letter and he's very despondent about it, and they all come out together and they're like, "Hey, what's going on?" And he basically lays out all of this info about himself. Again, this is like a sort of backstory dump, and he shows
it's so overwrought the way it's shot too.
He shows them this photo and he reveals this the man in the photo is his dad. Mark's like, "Oh, I thought it was your brother," and he sort of lays out that his mother was Korean. He says, my father was Black American, and he says that his dad left after completing military duty, I guess in Korea, and his mother got sick, told him to find his dad when she died. Again, a very similar story to Jane's situation. And he gives this very long monologue while he's crying and everybody's watching him. And he was like, I never wanted to find my dad because I was so mad at him for leaving us. And he's just like being very emotional. Cut to beach day.
It's like he's literally like, it's framed where he's like near the camera and he's like, eye drop crying, right? Well, everyone's behind him watching him. This long speech, and it's going on forever, and he's trying to cry, and then smash cut, Friends Forever is playing again, and they're at the beach, and we're going to see buns like they don't make down at the bakery. There's 1,000 ass shots in this.
That line.
And it's just like, because you're just sitting there like, wow, they are showing a lot of butts.
Yeah.
In this scene. And like, I don't think these are actresses. I think they're just shot like.
No, these are just people on the beach.
They're just making sure not to get their faces in the shot. And they're just getting their asses on this thing. And then they say, they don't make buns like that down at the bakery. And like, okay, you guys are aware what you're doing.
Yeah.
And then Tom falls on some girls.
Yeah, he falls into a bunch of women and he gets punched a lot by them, rightfully so. And it's them driving along on the beach going like, hey, baby, what's up? Come talk to me. Hey, ooh, look at that. Oh, yeah. Hey, come over here. Like, it's just that like looped over and over again. We get so many shots of Jim just smiling and staring off at something. And then we cut to an ass walking along the beach.
It's crazy. And then we have like John and Jane make out just super sloppily at this point.
Oh yeah, they're laying on it looked like they're laying on like a lawn chair that's embedded in the sand right on the shoreline. So there's just water washing up over them.
So the water and wind don't blow it away. That's what you do.
And we cut away from that to the bad guy Jim.
I love the bad guy Jim.
Where lots of guys are working out and sparring with each other, all wearing jeans.
It's so great because like it's not really they're sparring and kind of like half doing martial arts or just kind of half just roughhousing, but it's not that kind of gym. It's just like a gym, like a 24/7 fitness. So like they just moved everything off to the side. So everyone's like there's exercycles and weights and treadmills, and then there's these dudes just in jeans fighting in the middle. And it's like you had to pick between, you either had a hideout where you have a ring or something where you're learning how to fight, or you're just trying to get your cardio in. You can't do this in this gym.
And this is when we have the beat up musicians come in. They want to see
head wound.
Yeah, they want
massive head wound Harry.
Yes, he doesn't have a name, so that might as well be it. Head wound Harry's there to see Jeff, and he's like, "I want you to get rid of this band. They took over my spot, and if you can get rid of them, and I can get my spot back, I'll give you any money I make from my gigs, and I'll join up with your gang." This is a bad business plan, my friend.
Like, what does he get out of it in the end besides his gig back, which he would not get paid for?
Yeah, well, like, yes, I understand him wanting to get the band to go away, but not at the expense of I make no money now.
And I want to explain, and this is where it gets really confusing watching this movie, and we're making it sound a lot clearer than it actually is.
Yeah,
Believe it or not,
not as coherent as this.
It's not, because like scene to scene, everything kind of looks the same but different. Jeff is involved with the ninjas.
Yes.
However, the band is hiring Jeff's gang. he is not hiring the ninjas. The ninjas have nothing to do with this. He is hiring Jeff's gang, which is separate from the ninjas, even though Jeff works with and is the quote-unquote brother of the head of the ninjas. This is not who he is hiring to fight Dragon Sound. Dragon Sound is not...
Honestly, the only reason the ninjas get involved at the end is because Jeff dies.
Right. And like, if Jeff is so important to them, why is his gang not the ninjas? He has a separate gang which is less effective than the ninjas.
I think the ninjas are very effective. I think it's because the ninjas are the Miami Connection. They're from Miami. They come into Orlando to spread the drugs, and Jeff's gang kind of controls the Orlando operation, and they're there to sort of give out the stupid cocaine, as I think it's is it Jack says later, they're stupid cocaine, and I think that's where it's happening. So I think that Jeff's weird militant guys or like militia guys are controlling Orlando, which makes sense. And the Miami Connection, the Miami area is controlled by the ninjas. Also, I guess makes sense.
It kind of makes sense, except for like if he had like a tenuous / more antagonistic, like, we're both doing this for the drugs, but like, you know, your gang is Orlando, my gang's Miami, and like we'll work with you, but we don't get along. We're both trying to like gain power, except for they're kind of the same gang, except for one is ninjas and one isn't.
Yeah.
You think like maybe like he would hire like, you know, could I borrow 1 or 2 ninjas? Some of the Foot Clan, can I have a little bit of it?
Yeah.
Instead, I just have not ninjas, because ninjas are a Miami thing.
Yeah,
as everyone knows.
Should have went to Yoshida and said, "Can I have a Foot Clan as a treat?"
That is very, very, very timing this. Like,
yeah, of
dating
course.
it completely. That no one will know what that is in a week.
No, probably not. So we cut away from that to a Taekwondo montage. We have Jack and Mark sparring. We get Mark putting his fist in Jack's mouth.
Why? Why did this happen?
Mark and John, they spar with a knife, and Mark's foot ends up grabbing John's nose
with his toes.
They also, funnily enough, play out the entirety of the final fight that Mark has with Yoshido in the movie. They play it out here. They have the knife thing where John tries to stab Mark with the knife, and he grabs the knife and puts it in he puts it into John's stomach. Like, they're faking it, obviously, but he's like, he's doing the motion, and that's the exact same thing that happens with the bad guy in the final fight. And it was like, that's a weird thing to set up here. Like, was Yoshido off in the bushes with binoculars watching this fight happen? Like, if only he'd been there, he would have known the move and could have avoided being killed.
It's funny because it's kind of like this, like, okay, this is pretty good foreshadowing, but it's also kind of like,
it doesn't make any sense that it's foreshadowing. If like John is a bad guy at the end of the movie and he has to fight Mark, then sure, foreshadowing makes sense because like he got taken down by something that he had learned earlier. But because it's a completely different person, it doesn't make any sense why we're seeing it twice.
It just seems like rehearsal for the scene.
Yes, I think that's what it is.
They're like, we got this on film, we might as well use it.
Yeah.
This is where they have a discussion about going on a world tour of music and Taekwondo. And they would go to each, as they travel the world, they would go to each the Taekwondo training facilities, say in Italy or Ireland or anywhere. And they would go there and promote peace and goodwill.
It's weird, like that the whole thing they're talking about this tour that they're going to go on. They're talking about all the reconnecting with their roots and showing people that you can come together. But they also have a conversation about like after they break some boards and bricks and stuff, they're like, we should incorporate that into the show. Like we should incorporate board breaking into our musical concert.
Okay, you're still your first gig really here, so don't get too big on yourself. It's just you're just at a club in Orlando. It's fine. You don't have to worry about your world tour. And I mean, later they do have fireworks and pyro inside this club, which is crazy. Yeah. But like, keep your costs down. You're just, you're just
starting.
out. And like, it comes off, maybe it's because it's now, but it comes off as like, oh, these guys are incredibly naive. And also it's mic'd from several streets over. So like, it's really hard to keep track of what they're saying.
Yeah. They have another, they do another show. This is the one where Mark puts his foot in Jim's face.
Why would they repeat this scene?
And they get a note from Jeff that says he wants to meet them at the train tracks. So they go to the train yard. It's only Mark, John, and Jack, who I think are the only 3 people in Dragonstown who actually have martial arts training. It seems like Jim and Tom don't really know how to do a lot of stuff. I mean, Jim at one point during a fight is he tries to surprise a guy by jumping out of a garbage can, and he still gets his ass kicked. And Tom is tied up for most of it. So like neither of them really do a whole lot. But I think Mark, John, and Jack actually have the training. So that's why they show up to this train yard fight. And they basically pull up and then just start beating ass.
There's a lot of them. Once again, that guy has his head wound has not changed. He has not changed his specific blood stain on his
No, it's just, that's a bad sign though. If it's been a couple days and you still got this giant bloody wound on your forehead, you probably need to go to the doctor.
Not from Dragonstown, I should remind you, from the club owner.
Yes, so it's been several days. His brain is probably about to fall out of his head.
There's this weird scene where there's this redneck guy with like a skinny long-haired version of Joe Dirt kind of fights one of them. And he's got a belly shirt.
This guy, the lead singer comedy, of right? Like, he looks like the lead singer of Rednecks, the band that did Cotton Eye Joe.
Yes, he does.
Very specific reference.
From? Where did he go?
I mean, he went down in the dirt when he got kicked in the head by John.
Should mention that I went to my prom and my girlfriend's prom in like 95 and 96. Between the two proms, we must have heard that song 20 times.
What a time in society when a band called Rednecks, who weren't even from America, I think they were Swedish, could take an old weird 20s or something like song and turn it into some weird club hit. Like,
I just remember nobody at the proms dancing to it because like there's really not much you could do with it in a non-club area.
Yeah.
Like it's like remember it was played at the prom, then went to somewhere else and it was played there, and then we ended up at this like restaurant / reception place down by the waterfront, and it was like 2 a.m. and it was still playing. I'm like, no one at 2 a.m. wants to hear Rednecks. I'm so tired.
So they eventually, the cops show up and everybody scrambles and runs off, and they avoid capture. And this is when we've already talked about it, alluded to it a lot, but this is when we get Yoshido and his gang heading to a biker bar. And this is when I was kind of curious because, I'd read those articles and we already talked about it, but like, people in the community, they liked YK Kim. They were students of his, or they were friends of his. So the cops were open to shutting down streets, and like he cast a lot of people who he taught in his classes to be in the movie. Did all these bikers like him too? Because this is a real biker bar, and I feel like this is the most dangerous scene in the movie because I feel like at any point there could have been a murder. This could have turned into Altamont. A biker could have gotten mad and just started stabbing, and it would have been really hard to get away for some of these actors.
They're not like, these are just people, they're like the cameras in their face and they're laughing like, oh, what are you with that camera here? Like they're literally just bikers hanging out. And then Jeff comes in and he looks so small compared to these real beefy
and Yoshido
bikers.
Being there is also very weird.
It's so weird. And like in the end, it has nothing to do with anything. It just pads the footage.
It pads the footage. It's weird because they get there. There's lots of real nudity, which is very uncomfortable. Like it's
so uncomfortable.
Random biker women just pulling their shirts up and showing off their breasts. And it's just crazy.
It just comes off as like they got footage of drunk people and like no one ever signed off on anything. It's not filmed like a movie anymore. It's filmed like somebody walking through with a handheld camera.
Yeah, it's filmed like you're at a biker rally and there's just like tits everywhere.
It looks entirely different than the rest of the movie. It's so weird. Like the first time I saw it, I just sat there like, did I change, like hit a click to next video? Like what happened? What is this? And then Jeff walks in and he looks 1'1" and 120 pounds. I'm like, what is this?
And
why did they put why did they put this in the movie?
It's just a weird scene for Yoshido and Jeff to have a conversation, but they could have literally had it anywhere. Like, I think it's just that they must have had access to this bar and they must have known someone there who was cool with them coming, because then they could, and they told all the other bikers, so the bikers got to show off and film. Like on,
they're like,
yeah,
we'll put you in a real Hollywood film if you let us film all you. And they're like, oh, cool. And they pull their shirts up and they're like, and they had to leave it in.
Yeah. So they go to the bar and Yoshido's like, don't talk about business. And then immediately says, so what's the deal with Dragon Sound?
He might as well say, what's the deal with Dracula?
My favorite bit, though, about this whole thing, and I pointed this out to you, is while they're sitting there at the bar, Yoshido hits it off with some woman there who's like got her shirt open, and there's a guy down the bar who's like puts a nail in his nose and slides it in. He's listed in the cast as Nail Face, uncredited. And
to some, he's an angel, to others, a demon.
He has lots of sights to show you. Solve the lament configuration and you'll get a new motorcycle. And my favorite detail, though, is that while they're sitting at the bar, Jeff's wearing a hat, which he doesn't wear a lot of in the movie. But he's wearing a hat. He mostly has like a headband on, but in this scene, he's got a little baseball cap on, and it says Colorado Outward Bound School. And I was like, what is the story there? I want to know what the story of it is. Because right now, the whole movie, we've been very specifically located in Central Florida, specifically located in Orlando, despite the title of the film. But then out of nowhere, we've got Colorado Outward Bound School. And it like casts all these like interesting ideas about who Jeff is as a character. Did he find this in a thrift store, or did he actually go to the Colorado Outward Bound School? And what is an Outward Bound School?
I work in secondary education and I have never heard that phrase. Like, I know most of the names of all the colleges and from community colleges upwards in America, and I don't know what that is.
I looked it up. It's still a thing. Colorado Outward Bound School, outdoor education programs. It's
like making playground equipment.
No, it's for 55 years the Colorado Outward Bound School, also known as COBS, has been delivering challenging outdoor adventure programs for people of all ages and walks of life. They have every course is built around a progression that delivers powerful life lessons by encouraging participants to safely and confidently step outside their comfort zones while traveling in spectacular wilderness areas. So maybe Jeff went to this place and like learned a lot about himself, and also learned how to embrace the cocaine dealing ninja lifestyle.
I was just thinking, it sounds like a combination of a community college and American Ninja Warrior. A lot of wall climbing. You need a grip strength to get through this.
It says by conquering their own challenges, participants discover their true potential and realize they are capable of more than they ever imagined. Like controlling Central Florida with a gang of motorcycle ninjas.
Or beating the warp ramp in American Ninja Warrior.
But I just love that little detail, and now that I know what it is, it adds even more like life to that character.
Because for a character who speaks in monotone and doesn't have really a motivation beyond don't have sex with my sister.
Yeah, but he's like learned a lot about himself. That's what he discovered. He learned that he was in love with his sister and that no one was good enough for her but him.
I like that, like, after this scene, we have a scene with all the boys wearing UCF shirts. So I think they're going to a football game or something, and then that scene's over.
Yeah. They're eating breakfast the next morning. Jim still doesn't know anything about his dad, but I think it's John. Jeff. I'm getting confused. Yeah, the villain shows up and he's like, "Hey, why don't you do this thing?" But no, John suggests they all send letters. He's like, "All of us can send letters. They can't ignore all of us. We'll get you some answers." And this is around the time that they all go to eat and Tom gets kidnapped.
Very casually, they like walk out and they like, for a group of people who have been undefeated in this movie, he just gets punched in the face and they're like, you hear him through muffled, he goes, "We're gonna get you."
Yeah. And they have him tied up at this factory site, and eventually the band gets there and basically just kind of lays waste to the gang. I mean, they just do kind of straight up start murdering these guys. It's not as bad as it gets, but like there is a guy who gets his neck chopped open. So, I mean, they're not messing around here.
I mean, someone attacked one of their friends, and they are friends forever.
That's true. And
they basically crucified him too.
Yeah, and this is when Jeff eventually he dies. He falls off the edge of a construction platform and is dead. And this is
he screams hilariously.
Oh.
Like, oh!
And this is when Yoshido finds out, and he's like, "All right, well, you know, now we have to avenge his death." This is when he says they will not escape the Miami Ninja.
Miami Ninja. Like, "Sorry, boss, but your brother Jeff is dead, killed by Dragon Sound. You will not escape the Miami Ninja." And the movie could have ended right there. It would have been perfect.
And we get some ninja training montages here,
which is also fucking hilarious.
And this is when we get the pivotal scene when Jim gets a letter that his father has been found, and he's very excited, and everybody's very excited for him. And this is when Mark is like, "How much money do you have?" And everybody pools their money to go and buy Jim a suit. And
they're not going to have this world tour with this low of money.
I was very curious about that, because these are ostensibly all broke college students, and yet they're pooling their money together to get this guy a suit, which just shows how selfless they are and how much they care about each other, and they've built their family up. You know, like they didn't choose this family, or they chose this family. They were able to bring these people together, and so they go and they buy him this great suit, and everything is great. And I love that they come back from the store. He's wearing the suit. Tom and who are they again? Tom and Jack. That's right. I couldn't remember his name. Tom and Jack and Jane are there, and this is when Jane and John kind of reconnect. And then they've gotten back like 2 minutes ago, and they're like, "All right, well, we're off again to go see his dad."
And this is where, like, Jane's back and said, she had a lot of thinking to do, and she's hurting inside, but she loves John, even though Jeff is dead.
Yeah, she's totally fine with it. And so this is when we get to the big climax of the film, and it's insanity. I mean, it's really crazy. And I think there were some reshoots or some additional stuff that happened in at the end, which we can talk about when we get there. But they get ambushed, and this is when we get probably the best line reading of all time.
"Oh, ninjas."
And they're told that they will pay for Jeff's death, and then they quickly abandon their car and jump into the woods next to the road. And this is when things get a little wild, because up to this point, as we've already talked about, Dragon Sound has been pretty well equipped to handle themselves. Even characters like Jim and Tom, who don't seem to have a ton of martial arts training, they've held their own in the big street fights and everything else that have come their way. Like, they've been able to make it work. Like, they might have gotten a little hurt, but like, it's all been kind of it's almost like the big fight in Anchorman, where everybody's like doing crazy shit and then they're just fine, an hour later. And it's very much like that until this point when Jim is slashed by one of the ninjas and is dead. Like, he's dead.
Except for he's not.
Well, that's the thing that I was going to talk about, is he dies at the end of the movie when before they went back to do reshoots. The end of the movie is them rushing to the hospital, him in the car bleeding, John covered in blood saying, "Hang on, buddy," and YK Kim sitting there with him, and then the film goes to black and we get the title card of "Only through the elimination of violence can we achieve world peace."
I mean, it should have ended there. Here's the thing: for a group of people that have so brazenly said that they will and have sung about how they would defeat ninjas.
Yes,
this is their moment. Like,
and
literally,
they
this
do
should
it.
never happen in their life, and they do. Like literally, their entire ethos is about Taekwondo is better than ninjas, and they get a chance to prove it. Which you would think you like. Once again, your theory of there's a lot of ninjas out there, and this is what Taekwondo people do, is fight ninjas, is held up by the fact that when they see the ninjas on motorcycles coming to get them, the reaction is just, ugh, ninjas. Not, holy crap, there are ninjas, and they're on motorcycles.
No, they know.
It's just like, oh, ninjas. This day had to come.
Yeah, it's only a matter of time.
For. Only a matter of time. And like, they've sung about it, and then Jim fails, but like Angry John with a sword. If you ever wanted to see a lean, skinny version of Phelps holding a ninja sword and screaming without a shirt and being wet, which he would be because he's a swimmer, here's the movie for you, because he's tall and he's lanky and he's awkward, yet he defeats every ninja.
I mean,
he kills them.
He gets pretty worked up here. So like John is gleefully killing some of these ninjas. Like there is a point where he takes a sword and he's like ripped his shirt off, and he's in very good shape, and he just stabs into this ninja and is just being sprayed with blood. Like it's insane. There's blood all over him.
Which is so fun.
Once he rips his shirt off, he's just got this crazed look in his eye, and he's just like, who else can I murder?
Which is so funny when compared to what the movie will put on the screen at the very end.
Yeah, so it's an insane sequence. Like Mark also gets a hold of a sword and is just slashing people left and right. Like these ninjas basically have no chance, and one of them is able to escape. And he crawls off, and he tells Yoshida, who from this point forward we never see without the white ninja outfit on, and it's totally a different guy. Like, it's clearly not him anymore. Like, the guy looks shorter than him. Like, they don't even look close to being right. I think I read something, and I could be wrong on this, but I think that I read that the actor who played Jeff is actually in the ninja outfit at the end of the movie.
That would make sense for the build of him. It's just, it's as funny as it is that all these ninjas are dressed in black in middle of the daylight in Orlando. It's funny this guy is wearing basically snow camo in the middle of Orlando.
Yeah, and this ninja crawls up and he's like, hey, everybody else is dead. Dragon Sound did it. And this results in Yoshida cutting this guy's head off and then laughing like a maniac.
The first time I saw that, I was just in shock.
And then we get the big final fight between Yoshida and Mark, which is weird because I don't think that Mark and Yoshida meet at all in the movie. I don't think they ever see each other.
Maybe they just like,
right? They don't ever have a scene together.
No, considering that, like, in theory, this is like the main good guy versus the main bad guy. You think they would have some kind of personal connection or reason to be enemies? They don't. This is the first time they meet each other, and Mark beats him.
Yeah, he just he destroys him. And they play out that similar fight that he and John had earlier with the knife, and Yoshida's killed. And this is when the movie originally ended, but they added the scene in, and that's what I've read. Maybe I'm wrong, but they added the scene in at the hospital afterwards, where the doctor comes out and is like, "Oh, he's actually okay. The wounds were not as deep as we thought." It turns out Jim's dad is there. Jim's dad, who is basically the same age as Jim, but he just has some powder in his hair.
It's so funny. Oh, they have this young man show up as Jim's father.
Yeah. And they Jim comes out, and Jim's dad thanks Mark, and he's like, you're a good friend, and Jim's dad is like, your friends really care about you, and now I care about you too.
It's like, what is this ending?
And they all leave the hospital triumphantly, and then we get the title card about the elimination of violence, and then the movie's over. I mean, but it's so crazy that we get this insane, incredibly violent sequence that most of the movie up to that point hasn't been that crazy. Like at the beginning, I think we get like a really gory kill from one of the ninjas and the cocaine guys.
Yeah, they start in the throat.
And then there's one or two of those, but it's really pretty minor. And then for the end to explode in this like orgy of blood where there's just swords going and blood spraying on people and like just incredibly violent action. And then for it to end with a call to end violence is just so hilarious.
Like to a degree, you could say throughout the whole movie, like once again, like there's never Dragon's Town is never provoked into fighting. They're just in self-defense mode constantly, but they only use their fists. People are attacking them with weapons, usually blunt sticks, which is kind of funny. But like it's never anything they can't do. Like they were really good at Taekwondo and can punch and kick. Fine, they can do it. There's nothing to suggest that if one of them got a hand on a sword that they could fucking murder everybody.
Yeah.
But they do, and then it calls for an elimination of violence after the happy ending for, at best, the fifth build character in the whole fucking movie. Like, here's the happy ending for not your main character, not your secondary main character, not your third. Like, he might be below Tom.
Well,
Tom
yes.
falls into some bosoms.
Yeah, Tom is, I think, probably the last, although he does get a great solo during against the ninja. But I think there's some happy endings, like John and Jane, they reconnect, and so they're happy. And Jack does have the line at the end at the hospital, "No one's gonna mess with our band anymore." Because we'll fucking murder you if you do.
They've destroyed every possible band.
They've eliminated their competition.
Could you imagine if you were another band and you're like, well, we can't try out for this club because this band kicked the other band's ass.
Yeah, it's like we're not like, yeah, if there's an up and coming band, they're like, oh, maybe one day we could play at Palm Avenue. And like, no, sorry. Dragon Sound controls that territory. We can. That's what a sequel should be. Miami Connection 2, and it's like how Dragon Sound, it's gone to their heads, and they're like they're kind of assholes, and because they've like taken over, and absolute power corrupts absolutely, and like, Mark is an evil despot and like has to be taken down by another band / martial arts combo.
What if so to take their place at the club, you have to defeat them.
Yes.
You have to win 10 straight tournaments. And he's renamed the club Outworld.
Yeah, and it's Miami Connection but with a K.
Like, the real sequel to this is 5 years later, no one cares about white guy karate anymore, and they have no gimmick.
Yeah, I mean, I would be curious what a sequel to Miami Connection would look like. Where does Dragon Sound go? Do they actually get to go on their international tour? Do John and Jane stay together? Does Jim continue to have a good relationship with his father? What happens with Mark? Does he, does he take over Uncle Song's restaurant? Like if Uncle Song passes away, because he was an older guy, what I would love to see what happened to these characters. And maybe somebody speculated that when the movie kind of got super popular. Maybe Jeff comes back from the dead, or Yoshida's ghost haunts them. I don't know. Like it could be anything.
I just wish it was in some sort of shared cinematic universe with Bill and Ted, because they both kind of have the same goal in mind of using rock and roll to
save the world. Yes.
So like there's both. there's a lot less Napoleon in this movie, but like,
well, I mean, we're getting Bill and Ted Face the Music. I think it's 2020 later this year, so maybe they could shove in a Miami Connection reference.
Man, if they could just have one concert and Dragon Sound is playing there, like, just what a treat that would be.
Or we just see a marquee of like a Battle of the Bands show, and one of the bands is Dragon Sound. We never see them, but we just see their name on the marquee.
It would be wonderful.
That would be amazing. All right. Well, I think that about does it for this month's bonus Patreon episode. Again, picked by you, the Patreons. We will have a new poll up on the Patreon website with 4 new movies to choose from.
Actually, 3 old movies.
Yes,
and 1 new movie.
3 from the previous poll plus 1 additional film. So please head over there and vote for those. It will probably be up a little bit after this episode comes out, but definitely check that out, and let your voice be heard. Pick the movie that you want us to discuss here on the Patreon. I'm excited about 2020. We're in hiatus currently, but we've already got some things planned for when we return in February on the main feed, and I'm excited for what's to come over there. And thank you, as always, for continuing to support our Patreon endeavor.
Yeah, we enjoy. I never need an excuse to watch Miami Connection again, but it's nice to have one on the show for a while. I'm glad everyone voted for it. I enjoy that I hope you guys enjoy movies we're putting up for choices. They are all ones we've always kind of wanted to do, but
and
never
some that I've never heard. I mean, also and some that I've never heard of. Some that are kind of fit the mold of the show as usual.
So The Rocketeer is a movie about a guy with a rocket pack.
Yes. Okay. Thank you for letting me know. I didn't know.
Okay.
But until next month, when we're back talking about another film picked by you, our Patreon subscribers, I've been Josh.
I've been Skinner.
And stay friends for eternity.
We're on top because we play to win.
Friends through